Does your farm life dream seem too big, too unrealistic, or just too plain hard? You will find Morgan Patterson's farm journey just what the doctor ordered. If you're the woman who does it all, farm work, housework, bookwork, homework, getting up at the break of dawn, this is the podcast for you.
How do you multiply by fractions now?
Get away from the cares of the day. Restock, rootstock, feedstock, seedstock. Chat with women around the world who raise food, flowers, and fun. With your host, Kay Castrataro. That's me. Welcome back to Food, Flowers, and Fun. I am your host, Kay Castrataro, and as always, we are sponsored by Penlight for Farmers, helping you create purposeful farm lives rich in time, energy, and abundance. And today we have got a story and a half for you folks. I am so excited. This is Morgan Patterson of Morganics, and you're just going to love her. Hello, Morgan. How are you today?
Hi, I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for having me today.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here. See, I just jump in and interrupt. I'm terrible at that. Your story is just so inspiring for me. So I'm just going to have you jump right into who you are, how you got into farming. You've got an amazing journey. So go ahead, take it away.
Yeah. Well, there's multi-levels to the story, to the backstory that is kind of how we all got here. And it starts all the way back in college years when I graduated from university and I was getting a degree in dance at the time. I got my university degree and said, I don't think this is my path because making it as a dancer is hard and there's politics and there's complications and there's body things that give out. And I said, okay, so if that's not it, what is it? And I went traveling in Asia for about a year and started in Japan. And I was looking for like the cheapest thing I could do to travel and also be like in the culture that I was traveling to. And so I landed on WWOOFing.
Explain that to me, because when we talked in the screening, you used the term woofing, and I was like, okay,
yeah.
I don't know this term. So,
Oh, okay.
I was going to look it up and then I didn't because I got distracted. So, but now you can educate us. So
Yeah,
explain
WWOOFing is an
woofing.
acronym. And WWOOFing is willing workers on organic farms. And I think, don't quote me, I think it started in Japan, but Japan has a really robust WWOOF program. There's also woofers in the United States that I've stayed with, and some of my farmer friends are WWOOF hosts. And so it's like cultural immersion and volunteer help and exchange.
So
Where
cool.
most
So
of
cool.
the people, they go and live on these farms and they live with these like families who are doing any scale of farming, but mostly small. And you get to learn from each other for however long that goes.
Oh, so
So
cool. And let me ask you, because you're talking about immersion in the culture and thinking about Japan, the very first thing that I'm thinking of is language issues. And so, how much Japanese did you know before, and how much do you know now?
not enough and still not enough. On my first trip, I was traveling with a traveling partner and we had our dictionaries in hand and no technology at the time because we just had
I,
like
it
texting
was
cell phones.
before
So there was
Google
no,
Translate was
yes,
like part of your
exactly.
phone. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, but in the city, pretty much everything is accessible if you're paying attention. So everything is in English, and there's so many people that speak English. So we were really lucky. And then we just kept learning as much as we could while we were there. Japanese specifically is kind of like a patternistic language. And
Okay.
so if you can get these like pieces of the day rituals put together, then you can actually make your way through a lot.
Okay.
And so you like when you're in a family system, there's a system for the day. And so you can fit yourself into the pattern. And then through hand gestures and small phrases and translations, then you're like, okay, you want me to weed this area, and this is how you want me to do it. So I learned farming from seeing without a lot of explanations.
Wow. Fascinating. So honestly, though, it's kind of like growing up in
Hmm. Hmm.
agriculture
Yep.
because that's how
Yep.
we learn. You know, at first I'm like, oh, that must be complicated. And then I'm like, but that's how those of us who are farm kids, that's how
Yeah.
we learned. Like we
Yeah.
learned by no, just walk along with your parents
Hmm.
while they're doing
Hmm.
this and you
Yep.
watch them picking corn and they don't have to
Yep.
tell you, like you
Right.
watch them feeling the ears and you're like, "Oh, explain
Hmm.
that to me."
Why?
But it's
Yeah.
right, it's a lot of just observation. So
Hmm.
fascinating.
Hmm.
Okay. So you were woofing, you got some Japanese, you got some farming
Yeah.
education, and then
Yep.
what happened?
Yep. I finished so about a year and I traveled through other parts of Asia, but most of the woofing was in Japan and then a few months in India. So those are kind of like my kickoff to farming was like here are some really basic systems, basic meaning tool basic. No, nobody was using tractors. The biggest thing we used was like a tiny rice combine where you're driving around a quarter acre of a rice field and it's almost like the ice cleaning machines at the skating rinks. Like
Yeah,
that's what
yeah,
we're
the
doing.
Zambonis.
Yeah, yeah. So super tiny, super fun. And that was like my foundation of farming, right? Is like this is how these systems happen in other places in the world. And yeah, so that was my kickoff of switching from a dance life and a city life to finding a different path and being
Mm,
involved in food. Um,
okay.
so
All right.
yeah,
So you came home, but you
yep,
you were not a country girl. You lived in the city when you grew
yeah. Oh,
up.
very much
So
so.
so you come from hanging out on these, wow, I'm thinking like Asian farms, so very
Rice
rural, I'm
paddies,
imagining. Like,
wooden shoji style houses, 100-year-old
right.
buildings. Yes.
Amazing. So then you come back to the city and what kind of culture shock do you go through there? Because I would imagine
A
that was
pretty
pretty
big one.
huge. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've always been interested in other world cultures and other ways of living and how to use that to like reflect on my own choices and our cultural choices here.
Yeah.
And so it was, I actually came back with the number one desire to go again. And so I said, okay, what is it going to take? It's going to take me working for 3 years to save up enough money so that I can go again. And that it was during this period, right after I returned from my trip, that I reconnected with my now husband. And I said, okay, you want to date me? That's great. I'm glad you're here. In 3 years, I'm going to Asia, and I hope you'd like to come with me. And he did. So he came on the second trip. And the second trip was again to Japan for this time we stayed for 6 or 7 months.
Okay.
And so we stayed a month at every farm. We did rice farming, we did orchard farming, we did like eco building at this tiny little place up in the hills of Gifu where she
Oh,
also
talk about the
raised
eco building. What did that look like?
yeah, we did an earth bag project. And so earth bags are made with like homemade concrete. And so we would have like group activities where all of these very white woofers would come and we would stomp our concrete mix together. And then you would load these big long tubes and build your organic shape for whatever building. And she was building kind of like a dome structure for a classroom.
Oh, wow.
And so we did that and we got practiced at it and learned a new skill, again, mostly without a lot of English. But my husband studied Japanese, so we had a leg up
Oh,
on the second trip because I had somebody who knew a lot more. Yeah, he took it for several years in high school and into college, and so he was like, "That's where I want to
go
go. I want to go to Japan."
figure. Go figure.
Um, so yeah, so we dabbled in everything for another year and a few beautiful beaches in Bali on the way back. And then came back and I said, okay, new goal. We've traveled. You've made it through the travel, so I know you're here for the long haul. And new goal is I
If
want
I
to find a
can live
place to
with you,
live.
if I can live with you traveling for 7 months, then I guess
Yeah.
we can make it as a couple forever.
Yes. Well, it was trial by fire. So he made it through fire
You know,
and he was
there's
ready to
something to
go.
be said for that because you really don't know until you've done it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And I knew that he could hack it in like this physical lifestyle, right? Like he did the
Right?
farming right next to me. We learned together and we learned different things. But it was like, all right, that was cool. That was fun. I liked that.
Mm, yeah.
Um,
Oh, so much we could talk about. I mean, we could dig into the whole relationship aspect of that for hours, but we
yes.
won't. We won't. Maybe
Uh,
next time.
we still have like 2 years to get through.
So you
uh,
come back, you know that he's a keeper, and
yes.
where do you go from there?
I let him know the next goal because through all of this process, I always have the next goal. Whether or not it stays the same goal, I always have a goal. And
Oh,
so
I
the next
love
goal
that. All
was,
right. So, yeah, let's talk about that for a minute because I think that's
yeah.
so important. Like, I am a big one for working with farmers to set goals and have like a
Mhm,
vision.
mhm.
And at the same time, I'm always like, don't feel like this is like carved in stone,
Oh no,
because things happen,
yeah,
life
because it's
happens,
farming.
we change. Right. Well, and it's life. Like, so many
Yeah.
things can happen. So, it's okay to set a goal and start
Mhm,
working to that goal and
mhm.
then be like, huh, that's not where I'm going to end up. You were talking
Yeah,
about starting out in dance and I had a similar experience because I started out as a vocal performance major and
right. Yeah.
midway through my sophomore year I was like, I'm starting to not like singing because this
Hmm.
kind of focus
Hmm.
is taking the fun out of singing.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, that ain't gonna work. So
No.
switch majors, switch life. But that's not a failure. That's a redirect. It's like totally
Yeah.
okay. So all right.
Yeah.
So the next goal that might shift was
It was, I need to be in a place where I'm going to be farming and learning the kind of farming that I want to be learning. And that was a very broad scope at the time. I knew it wasn't going to be in Missouri because Missouri farming climate, the bugs, the humidity, like if I'm going to pick a place anywhere, I'm not going to pick Missouri just
you
because
you were
farming.
hanging out on Bali. So like
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I really wanted to be tropically located. And my husband said,
Hawaii?
that's too far away from everything we know. And I said, okay, let's find a compromise. And so I went to my family and I said, okay, family, here's the goal. And they said, are you sure? And I said, oh, definitely. And so we had a big family meeting in that summer and we're like, okay, well, then we're all going. And so it was like my parents, my little brother, that's my nuclear family, and my husband. And then at the same time, my brother's two best friends were like, you know what? We need like a ride off into adventure. So we're on too. Sign us up. Um,
This when you told me this, I'm like, wait a minute, the whole family picked up and moved. Like, I can't imagine my whole family picking up to do anything together. Like, okay, well, I shouldn't say that. Like, we did pick up to go dairy farm, but I was in
mhm.
high school and I'm the oldest of three. So we
Yeah.
kids kind of only had so much choice in that matter. It
Yes.
was kind of like your parents are moving to dairy farm. And yes, we all discussed it. And whether we like it or not, we're really going to New York and we're dairy farming.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but as
I
an
would say
adult,
that's probably more typical.
I can't imagine, like, I can't imagine me deciding I'm gonna move across the country and then my family saying, "Oh, we'll come with you." So,
It
so
was a
that's
lot of talking.
yeah.
And I think there's a lot of privilege in our situation because my
Mm,
parents are able to say, you know what, we can do that. We have enough work possibility and privilege and money and
mm.
support to be able to say, yes, we are going to go with you and do that.
Yeah,
Um,
what a beautiful
and
perspective to look at that as a privilege because I think it totally
hugely,
is, but I
yeah,
think that sometimes we're afraid of saying, "Oh, I'm privileged." Well, oftentimes we are super privileged, and to be able to recognize that privilege when it's there and to be grateful for it, I think is a real gift.
yeah.
So,
Thanks.
yeah,
Yeah, I try to use that to inform my perspective a lot.
yeah,
Um, yeah.
yeah, I love
But
that.
yes, so the situation was that my parents were able to move. They're both in psychology, and so they've seen clients, and so it means picking up and settling down in a different place where you can build a client basis again.
Right?
And so that was the ultimate reason why we ended up in Oregon, is because my mom put out a job search and she was hired on at Oregon State University to their psychology department as a therapist. And she said, okay, there's this place in Oregon and it's called Corvallis or Corvallis. I'm not exactly sure, but we're going to go check it out and we'll let you know what we think. So she and my dad flew out for the interview and checked out the town. And we're like, yeah, we think it's kind of cool and it's kind of fun. You guys want to move out here? And so we said, sure, Oregon sounds like there's good farming out there. And that's so we decided Oregon would be the place.
I love I love how this is like, so for those of you out there listening, like, do you notice a theme here? There's like a goal, but the
Mhm,
goal is kind of nebulous. And it's
mhm,
okay to be
mhm,
like, not quite sure what that goal is going to look like. So
mhm.
there's like this bright shining light out there that you're heading towards, and there's also this complete like, all right, we'll be flexible and adapt. I love it. I just love this.
It's definitely like the world travel mindset of I'm trying to get to this place. I don't know how I'm getting there. Sometimes it's walking, sometimes it's hitchhiking, sometimes it's the, fastest train on the planet. It can be all different kinds of things.
Right. Oh, and
Yeah.
such a metaphor for life. Such a metaphor for
Yes.
life. How we
Yes.
really are all kind of world traveling through our own little world, and
Yep.
we really do need to, like, sometimes we're crawling on our hands and knees through the desert,
Yes.
and other times we're, flying first class, and I've never
Yeah.
flown first class in
Exactly.
my life, but
Me neither.
in theory, one day.
Exactly.
I'm not
Yeah.
dead yet.
Yeah. Yeah. There's still time. Put that on the list.
For sure.
Yeah, so we made it out to Oregon, and my parents moved a few weeks before us. They signed off on a rental for all of the kids, and the kids moved into this 5-bedroom house out in the woods on the like trail road that leads up to Mary's Peak. And so we're like 20 minutes from town in these deep Oregon woods where the trees are taller than any tree we've ever seen in our lives because this was our first time coming to Oregon was when we moved.
Oh, yeah,
Uh,
and you're from the Midwest. You're from
yeah,
Missouri. Yeah, not a
yeah,
lot of big tall
cornfields.
trees in
Yeah,
in Missouri. Yeah.
yes, yeah. So it was like a culture shock, right? But it was also for me, it was this connection piece. And it reminded me so much of Japan and these woods and these mountains and just like this landscape. And I was like, I'm vibing with Oregon just for this because I wanted to stay in Japan.
Yeah.
And that's not where the path went. Um, and yeah, so
You're
we
not
ended
dead
up
yet
out in the
either.
woods. Yeah, exactly. And over the next 2 years, we kind of wiggled our way into farming. I went to the farmers market the first couple of weeks, and Ken and my husband, got hired on to a local family farm, and we worked there until we met my now farmer mentor. I was at the farmers market working, and she was in the booth next to me, and I kept looking over every week and being like, I need to work for that farmer. Um,
Mm.
and yeah, because she was organized, she was put together, she could speak for herself, she could represent these like high value crops, but also from this like moral ethical standpoint of what it means to be organic and biodynamic and like the relationship with the land. And she was a woman farmer and she was rocking it, and I was like, yes, that is new goal unlocked, that's where I need to go. And so I went home and told my husband, I was like, okay, I'm going to work for this farmer. And over the next like winter, it was going into winter, so she didn't need help. And I kept going back and saying, can I volunteer for you? And she's like, I don't do that. And I was like, well, can I work part-time for you? She's like, I don't do that. And I was like, well, I need to pay the bills. And she's like, this is my offer. And I said, okay, I'm quitting. I'll be back next week. Let me know if you want to hire me. And she interviewed, I think, 2 farmers that year, and she decided that I would be an okay fit. Uh,
Well, you were
and I
obviously
signed.
invested. Like, you know
Yes.
what?
Oh, to be.
Sometimes for a farmer, that right there is the single, and you had experience. I mean, it's not like you'd never farmed. You've been farming.
Very little. I had baby experience.
But you know what? Baby experience sometimes it's
Mhm.
better that way, because then
Yes.
as the employer, you can you can
Mhm.
cultivate the farm help the way that you want them to. You like that, don't you?
Yeah, that's good.
It just comes. I just it's natural for me. But you really can. You can say, no, I want you to do it this way. And because you're not already invested in your own systems,
Mhm.
it makes you a little bit more amenable to whatever it is that the farmer wants. And
Definitely. Yes.
and you were persistent. So, you're not going to
Yes.
quit because
Nope.
you've been working this hard to get there. So,
Exactly. Yep. Yep. Yeah, I signed my first contract for the year because it was an agreement that went until like November, right? When that's her like end of the main season. And so it like was signed the end date and you pick the end date and I said forever. Um, and that became my new goal. It became my goal to be a junior farming partner at Goodfoot Farm and to someday be a possible succession piece in that farm. She's 18 years older than me, and so it's a good stair step. She
Yeah.
farms in a way that is just continuously admirable for me. And it was like, no, I could be here for the long run.
Yeah.
And so Ken and I again kind of shifted in that direction, and the next door neighbor to the farm bought the property the second year I was working there, and she was like, I don't need to live here, but I need somebody to live here and caretake it for an open period of time until I retire and I'm ready to move in. And so my employer was like, okay, you got just the people for you. So we moved on to the farm. And we lived there for 7 years and we worked at Goodfoot Farm for 7 years. And I was the farmer, but Ken would help out sometimes. And he spent the rest of his working hours making shoes at a local shoe company. That was the
Yeah, talk a little
closest
bit
place.
about those shoes because spoiler alert,
Yeah,
the shoes matter. So
they do matter.
talk a little bit
Yes,
about the
all these
shoes.
skills that we built, they come back into play, right? And so every time we add a new skill, it comes back. And so yeah, my husband, he got the first job in the winter after we moved there. And he got a job at Soft Star Shoes. And this is my plug for this amazing company. They're in Philomath, Oregon, and they make minimalist leather shoes. So where you might be thinking shoe elves with hammer and nails,
That's what I was thinking.
he is actually a cordwainer, and they sew with leather and more pliable soles, and they stitch those and glue those together. And so he learned how to make shoes. He didn't know how to make shoes. His last job was a hardware store. He worked in a movie theater for 7 years in high school. Like he's a very handy person
Yeah.
and really good at picking up like fine motor skills.
Mhm.
But yeah, he learned how to make all of the shoes that they still make today.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So he spent
and
about 7 years.
we'll come back to where those go. So this is a teaser. Don't go away.
Exactly. The yeah, suspenseful hook of shoemaking. Yeah. And so we spent a really lovely period working at Goodfoot Farm, living out there. And we finally got married in 2020. Yep, I think that was it.
Oh gosh,
uh,
the COVID years.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we were going to have a big wedding. That's why I'm forgetting. And we weren't going to have that, obviously, because COVID.
Yeah,
And so we ended up having an elopement that we told no one about on the solstice on 2020.
not a
So,
bad idea. That is
yeah.
not actually a bad idea.
Yes. We had a big party later, and that was after our daughter was born. So she got to be the flower girl when she was a little toddler. And we had our wedding in the summer of 22. And so she was born in the house that we lived in. Like we really deeply connected with the farm that we were at. And we were making these ideas of we're going to figure out ways, maybe we're going to buy this parcel down the road, which my boss did, and it was scrubland, and turn it into more farmland that maybe we could put a second house on. And someday we could become the main farmers and they could retire into the other house. And so we were planning and dreaming and working together, and really like we were becoming part of that farm in a really beautiful way, until the inevitable promise from our landlords that we're ready to inhabit our property now. It's time. And we were
Mm,
like, right, that's right. We forgot about this part.
now we're
And
homeless.
yeah, well, yeah, kind of. She gave us 6 months, which was very kind. Six
It's
months to
great.
figure out what you're going to do. And so we started the clock and we put the goal board on the wall and said, okay, what is the goal? What is the goal right now? And the small goal was stability, right? We have a child. We need to be working. We need to be living. Our secondary goal is we have this flock of chickens that we had started in 2019 for eggs and meat. And we have geese. And it wasn't a very big flock, but it was like, this is our flock. What are we going to do with them? And then we have the desire goal of I want to be farming. And that's the number one thing I want to do. And I want to increase. I don't want to start over, right? I don't want to go back to being the new person on somebody else's farm. I'm ready to do my own project and try that. Try that. We had many versions of like cute backyard, all different
Yeah.
models. And so with this new goal, we started again going and talking to my family and saying, hey, fam, this is what's up. This is what we're thinking about. And these are our options. And I don't know if you know what property is like out here, but things are expensive.
Yeah, it's
Land is
probably a lot
expensive.
like it. I feel like the coasts are not a lot different. And yeah, Rhode Island has the most expensive farmland in the country. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
we'll just go with probably pretty close to that.
Probably similar. Yes. Exorbitant. And so we start looking and we ignore the bank account because the bank account says we have $5,000 to our name. That's in checking and savings. Like we are poor farmers. We make great farming wages and great factory worker wages, but those aren't enough to buy land if you don't have anything.
Right.
And so we started doing the flexible creativity of how we're going to solve the problem to get to the goal. And we started looking at farmland here and we started talking to my parents, and my parents said, okay, if this is really what we're going to do, then let's look for property that can sustain us all. And that goal was living space for everybody, which ideally is two buildings, but we looked at plenty of farms where there was one house that we were going to expand on or be
Yep.
creative with.
Mother-in-law
And
apartment or something like that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, or somebody lives in town first and this and
Yep.
that. But yeah, so starting to pool our resources and finances and ideas. And it seemed impossible. We were having trouble finding something that was close enough to an urban area for my parents to be able to commute to their offices, and but far enough out to be able to find farmland that wasn't too pricey, but also had what we needed and that we could afford the payments on while we build up a brand new farming thing, whatever that was going to be.
Yeah.
Um, and so Ken and I did some really serious considering of moving back to Missouri. And that was for my mom, that was the like the nail in the coffin of her deciding to join us. She was like, okay, I was kind of on the fence about it, but if you're going to take my only grandchild away, I'm not going to do that.
Yes, it's the grandbabies. It's always
Okay.
the grandbabies.
Yeah, yeah,
Take my
yeah,
daughter, but
yeah,
don't take
yeah,
my granddaughter.
yeah, yeah. That was it for her. She
Yes,
was
yes,
sold.
yes.
And she said, okay, we are going to do whatever it takes to solve the problem here. We're going to find the land. We're going to buy it here. And
Because
so
we are not
I,
moving again at this stage in life to go
exactly,
back and start a
exactly.
whole
She's
new
like, you
business
already,
all
I'm
over
not
again.
doing,
You're way younger than we are, kids.
yeah, yes, exactly. Yeah. So,
Oh,
yeah, so then it was get really creative. And we managed to find this property and reach for the stars. Again, citing back to that privilege of the fact that my parents had resources. They owned a house in a city that they could sell for a down payment, that they have enough worthy credit lines that they were able to qualify for half of the loan, and that we were able to go through this paperwork process and take the time out of a working job in order to jump through all the government hoops to be able to get a government loan through the Farm Service Agency.
and
Um,
are we okay with saying how much this property
oh yeah.
costs?
Oh
Yeah.
yes, I'm very clear about that. Yeah.
Tell us about this because again, you yourself are working on 5 grand. And
Yeah.
this property is how much again?
Yeah, this property is a 26-acre working farm, and it was listed as, I think it was like 1.42 million was the listing price. And yeah, insane,
Oh,
just ridiculous. But in so many other ways, it checked all the boxes. It had two houses that are separate from each other.
yep,
So the parents and the kids can live not under one roof for sanity.
which is a good
Um,
thing. It is a good thing.
such a good thing. It had an amazing barn. And it had established perennials. We have, like 2 miles of table grapes and 1,000 fruit trees that are currently mature, as well as some hoop houses and field space and pasture space,
And
and
the
a
barn
working
also
commercial
featured
kitchen.
something else. What did the barn
Yeah,
also feature?
yeah, it has a working commercial kitchen
Yeah,
where
commercial
the
kitchen.
previous farmers were producing goods from their farm and from other local farms to make value added goods. And so it was like, okay, so if we walk up to this farm, we can get going. We can start producing this year in order to pay that massive bill over there that's coming up. uh, but we weren't there yet. This was the beginning of 2024 when we came and saw it for the first time. And we closed on the sale November 27th of 2024. And so it took us that long to go through all of the hoops to get
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Um,
And talk about that because tell us, I love this story because I mean I really truly do. And I love it because for so many of us, the word can't is like the word that we use. Like, oh, well, I can't do that. Oh, that would never work because, oh, don't even think about that because, and it's always the no, 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 no. And your story is like, yes, how? Yes, how?
yes.
It's not no, we can't. It's yes, that's what we want. And how are we going to get there?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that mindset, oh, it gives me shivers. That mindset, it seriously does, because I feel like that changes everything. And
Mm-hmm.
that perspective changes everything because you look at it and you say, all right, how do we get there? Now,
Mm-hmm.
maybe some people would not have been able to pull that $1.4 million thing because they didn't have all these other things. And yet,
Right.
you don't know. You don't know until you get into that situation and
Mm-hmm.
you're doing the
Mm-hmm.
research and you're doing the creative finagling and you're telling your parents, "Oh, well, we could move back to Missouri with the baby." And they're like, "No, don't take my baby." Like, but if you had just stopped at the price tag and said, "Well, we
Mm-hmm.
can't afford that," and
Mm-hmm.
walked away from it, you would
Mm-hmm.
have missed out on an
Yes.
amazing opportunity. And the this just what's the word I want? Oh, providence. The providence of this whole thing. Like, tell us about the family that you bought the farm from.
Yeah, the wonderful family that we bought the farm from is where some of these pieces start to come back into the cycle of connecting. And so we came to this farm not knowing anything about the farm other than they sold at the Eugene market, which was the city my parents were living in. And that they have been organic farmers for decades and they're old and they need to retire. And so we came to meet them with realtors from both sides in tow and not knowing, because most times when you go to look at properties, you don't meet with the sellers. But this was going to be vital to our process, is being able to know each other. And so on our first pasture walk around the farm, seeing it in its first season before trees are budding out, this was, like I said, like March. We found out that the farmer's wife was born and raised in Japan to missionary families. And so it was like, oh, okay. I quickly unearthed my limited Japanese vocabulary. I am getting excited about crops that she's grown and other crops. Have you tried to grow shiso? Have you tried this kind of persimmon? Like all of these, things. And so she and I both just went off trying to like sort through the connection pieces. And it was it was kismet, right?
Yeah,
And yeah,
absolutely.
so there's this connection. And we dove into that connection and built a relationship through that lens with herself and her husband. Her husband had always been the primary, like physical side of the farm. But we found out early on in our selling process that he has Alzheimer's. And that is basically the underlying reason why the farm, kind of fell into a state of neglect. The blackberries grew over the cherry orchard, like all of these pieces fell through. And they've been living here for 26 or 7 years. And it was painfully time that they had to relinquish it. And they wanted to make sure that it went where to people who would work to continue that legacy, to continue that work, where he had built it from a grass field. The only thing here was the water rights and the farmhouse that they lived in, and
Wow.
everything else they did.
Wow.
Um, and like my first intention upon meeting them was, I see this value, I see you in this farm, and I like new goal right here is I want to carry on your legacy.
Mm.
And so it became crystallized upon meeting them that this was the place where we needed to be. And my parents did not believe that. Because the state of the farm
Your parents
was
were seeing a
intense.
really big price tag and a
Yes.
really dilapidated piece of property.
Yes, exactly. Like you could not get through so many rows. When we first started
Yeah.
mowing, tractor mowing, you would pray that there was no hazards hidden in the blackberries, and you would just drive with the brush hog uh, until we
Yeah.
got those rows clear.
Yeah.
And so that means like a lot of it wasn't functional for production, but it was there.
Yeah.
And I could see that it was there. I could see the potential. I could see the thought and the vision they had to build this commercial kitchen to process these foods. And so we had this big outdoor meeting in front of the barn, and Jesse, the farmer, brought flowers that day, and we had our realtors in tow. We had books of records, and I had like a huge list of questions. And I said, okay, we would like to buy your property, but it's going to be really complicated. And you're going to have to trust us and be patient with us for probably 6 months while we go through this process that is buying a farm through Farm Service Agency, where they have farm loans that you can get up to $600,000, and it's the lowest interest rate in the country. I think our interest rate is like 3.1 on our portion of
Amazing. Yeah.
that loan. But you have to go through mountains of paperwork. You have to prove that you don't qualify for other loans. You have to prove that the farm plan itself, I wrote a 40-page business proposal
Yeah.
to say that here's my plans, here's how we're going to make our money, here's the timeline on that, here's how we're going to repay and support. We had to have the Farm Service Agency come out and like audit our crops and their potential. And they wrote a big report on the conventional pricing that we could get for these products and how it might look under organic status and the differences and the costs. Um, yeah. And so we had to do all of this step by step by step, where you don't know if you're going to be qualified for this loan until you're done. And they review it and then they say yes or no.
Yeah. So that was, I mean, yeah, that is a big ask. It is a big ask.
Yeah.
And it's a heck of a lot of work for you guys because it would have been
Yeah.
easier to say we can't afford this, we got to go do something easier.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I just feel like again that whole sense of potential and I think the relationship that you're talking about is really very key to this because I think,
Hmm.
obviously I don't know Jessie and her husband at all. I've never met them, never seen a picture of them, but having heard your story, there is a connection that happens with people. And when we
Hmm.
connect
Hmm.
and we both share a vision, things can
Hmm.
happen. Magic
Yes.
can happen.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
feel like that's what you were talking about. But they were trusting you, but you end up putting a heck of a lot of trust in them as well. And talk
We
about
did.
what that looks like because
Yeah.
I kind of feel like yeah, they're trusting you in the fact that you've got a 6 month process and you've got to try to get your money and okay, so they can wait 6 months. But honestly, I'm
Hmm.
looking at it from their perspective. I'm like, at the worst, what are they out? 6 months? Because then somebody comes
Hmm.
along, they offer more money and they pay the
Yeah.
bill and
Yeah.
because somebody's going to buy that piece of property. Like
Yes. And that
you
was a
know,
very real fear.
that piece of property is not going to go, unwanted. So
Right.
so they had some risk, but you took a whole lot of risk. And tell
We
us how
did.
you did that. And we've got, oh gosh. Yeah,
Yes.
go ahead.
So yeah, so we're into the next phase, and the next phase was a time crunch where we started this paperwork process in March or May or April, and we also had a hard deadline from our landlord of the 6 months is approaching, and that's at the end of May. So we then have to, while we're trying to do this paperwork, while we're trying to work our jobs, while we're trying to take care of our child, we also have to take on this second round of possibility creating and say, what are we going to do in the meantime? Before we close on this sale, we have to move out, and we have our chickens and we have our child. Are we going to go and rent some farmland? Are we going to rent an apartment? Are we going to sell our chickens? What are all these pieces? And the possibility that sounded craziest at the time, but also the most logical, was we need to just move on to the farm and start working it because there's so much to do. And we have so much to catch up on in order to get it into production. And so we approached Jesse and Charles and said, here's what we want to do. We want to sign a lease agreement. We want to move into this empty house on the property, and we want to start working it. And this, it kicked off like a whole round of like going to the lawyers on getting drafts written up and getting proposals, because we also, again, don't have any money. So paying rent while we're working on the farm was literally impossible. So it was like, okay, we want to give up our jobs because we want to start doing this, but here's how it has to work. I think at one point I wrote a letter to Jesse that the lawyer delivered to her, because at this point we went into very tense things and wanted to keep things very like boundaried. And so we spent less time talking to them about it. We wouldn't talk about any of these specifics. We would talk farming. And so we went through all this process. I wrote her a letter of like, here's the reality, but here's what, like, please trust us. This is what this means to us. And they agreed. We created a lease where we would live on the farm, and we would have a deadline of, I think it was 3 months, that would get us closer to that FSA deadline and closer to the next tipping point, which was my parents selling their house. But my parents had to wait until the FSA was approved to sell their house, but then they had to sell it as fast as possible. And so they agreed. And we moved on to the farm. But in the time that it took to get our leases agreed to and all those pieces agreed to, there was about a 2-week gap where we knew we were not going to be able to live on the farm yet, but we have our chickens and we have to be out of our rental. So we bought a tent.
You did what everybody does.
We bought a tent. We bought a massive tent. It's a 20-foot diameter circular style tent with a pole in the middle that makes it look kind of like a yurt. And yeah, we moved into my friend's backyard, and she has some wooded property. And so next to her little mini orchard, we set up our tent and we set up an outdoor kitchen. And then her mini orchard was fenced. So we moved our flock into it, and they got to fertilize her fruit trees for the summer. And we continued working at our jobs from our tent, and living in a tent for 2 weeks. We brought our bed and we brought our couch and we brought a dresser, and everything else went into storage.
Oh man.
And yeah, it was a very rainy 2 weeks. It was kind of a rainy June.
Of course it was. Of course it was.
It
And
was,
you're in the Pacific Northwest, so
yeah,
like you have a lot of rainy days anyway,
exactly.
from what I've
Yeah.
heard. So
It rained a lot.
Warm,
Yeah.
but wet.
Yeah. So yeah, it's fun to say that like we got here because we went tent camping for a few weeks, and that's how we ended up on this farm. But while we were there, yeah, while we were there, we finished our FSA application, and we got, like, they were ready to start the auditing process and the review processing. So it was in. And then they agreed, and we moved on to the farm, and we started farming right out of the gate, clearing blackberries, checking out the fruit, and doing farm walks a couple times a week with the farmers who are now just living across the farm from us. Yeah. So we got, when Charles was lucid, we got valuable information about the history of the farm and his reasons for things. And then sometimes there wasn't so much. And so there's a lot of puzzles and mysteries to piece together. And there still is. So we're kind of farming under that like language barrier again, right? Where the language this time is information that's not accessible.
Mm.
And so we're learning these farming systems again without that sharing of wordage.
Wow, what? Oh, wow, how powerful that is landing on me that there's like no, really like a language barrier because
Mhm.
how many of us when we buy a property or even just a house, but you buy something and you don't have 6 months that you're like communicating with the owners on any
Mhm.
front. Like it's
Mhm.
basically, you know, actually the people that we bought our house from, we later found out that we had kids at exactly the same age and we run into each other all the time at like school events. Every time there's a band
Yeah.
concert, it's like, oh, hi, how are you? And that's pretty much like how we keep running into each other. But as far as like sitting down with her and being like, so, how did you do this? And why did you do that? Like, none of that.
No.
And so you just do go in blind and you say, well,
Mhm.
why in the world did you put a light switch there? That was a dumb place to do that. How come you
Yep.
don't have more outlets? Like, or
Yep.
whatever.
Mhm.
And so it is a language barrier. And I think when we buy a place, we just get accustomed to the fact that we go in blind.
Mhm.
But I really do like that, like it's a lack of information. There is a story that goes
Yeah.
with that farm, and
Yeah.
there's a history there. And,
Mhm.
fortunately, our neighbor who has now passed, had been here for like 50 years, so he knew everything about everything.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
we got a lot of that information over the years, usually the
Mhm.
worst possible parts of our of the history. But
Yeah.
we did get some of that because we had that generational knowledge that was still there. So yeah, I like that. It is kind of a mystery. So on the one hand, you have kind of like the outline of the story, but filling it in, it's something that
Mhm.
now it's yours, and now
Mhm.
you make it. And I'm looking at
Mhm.
our time, and I'm saying, "Arr." So I'm going to have you jump ahead
Yes.
to
Yeah.
where you are now, what you guys are doing. We gotta make the connection to those shoes because we promised to talk about the shoes.
Okay, I promise I won't forget.
So where are you now? You got your
Yes.
FSA loan. You
Mhm.
you guys moved, you were already here, but they moved out.
Mhm.
They went to their place in town.
Mhm.
Your parents moved onto the property. Did brother and buddies move onto the property as well, or have they established?
Later, yes. Yes, my brother and his partner have been living here at the farms for a year now. So
Okay.
they were the last pair to join. And then the buddies, actually, the friends moved back to Missouri.
Ah,
They were both here. Well, one buddy was short time and one buddy another 2 years. But they both went back to Missouri.
okay.
So their paths left ours, but they weren't going to be farmers. So that was perfect.
Yeah, that wasn't working. But you had this kitchen in this barn now. You've got this
Yeah.
commercial kitchen.
Yep.
And tell us what you are doing now with your commercial kitchen.
Yeah, we use our commercial kitchen. We were given the recipes and the formulas from the farmers, the sellers, and I said, "Can we please continue this for you guys, or in honor of you?" And they said, "Yes, you can continue this." And so when we first rolled up to market with all of these goods, people were like, "We know you, but we don't know you." And so we started bringing kimchi, we started bringing sauerkraut, and we started bringing fruit leather. And so we make our fruit leather in this big dehydrator with applesauce and juice from the farm, and we spread it out in these sheets, and they get cooked and they get made by my husband, who then, when he pulls all the fruit leather out, he goes straight back to his training of cutting out shoe leather and he starts cutting out fruit leather. And I keep asking him to make me some fruit leather shoes someday just for a gag.
For a
So I
kid,
hope he'll do it.
right. You gotta do it. You gotta,
I
you
think it'd be
gotta,
great.
you gotta do
Yeah.
it. So, and your brother now is the head kimchi and sauerkraut maker. Is that
Yes. Yeah.
correct?
When we moved to the farm, when we bought it, it had been my kind of concept that there's no way I can run the kitchen. I love cooking. I love being in the kitchen, but I have to take care of everything outside. And my husband needs to help me with that because there's 26 acres of it and we have a lot to do. And so I asked my brother and his partner early on, like, so I know you guys don't cook at home, but what do you think about running the kitchen on the farm and making stuff for the rest of your lives? And my brother was like, I've always wanted to learn a skill really good that I could be like the Japanese master when he's 100 and he's been making the same thing for 50 years. So that sounds like a good plan to me.
Oh my.
And so they self-taught themselves. They had the recipe and they had the internet, and they spent 6 months learning about fermentation and lactoferments and cabbage and all the pieces that go into it. And they started making kimchi batch after kimchi batch until we got to a product that we wanted to sell
Mm,
and got to something that we liked and wanted to represent, that had the ingredients and the quality that we wanted because we weren't growing it yet,
right.
and could reflect what this farm was. So we made a label that kind of gives an homage. They used to have a sunrise, and so we followed that with our own colors.
Ah,
And we fabricated our tagline for the farm, which is gratefully harvested. And their farm was called the Grateful Harvest. And so we've just been continuing to take these pieces of them with us,
yeah.
um, in order to, yeah, to carry on what their first vision was.
Oh, that just so I mean that just it touches my heart so much because it is now yours and you
Mhm.
have very intentionally respected the people who have come before and the
Mhm.
history. And I think that that's so hard for so many of us in our culture. It's not an American thing to do that. Like Americans are really good at we're looking ahead. We're building something new. We're creating something that's ours. We're sticking our name on everything that we can. Like, there's this idea of, the self-made man kind of thing going
Mhm.
on. And what I love about this is that this is really so much more of who we are as people. Like none of us
Mhm.
exists in a vacuum, and
Right.
all of us relies on the people who have
Yeah.
come before and the
Yeah.
experiences that they had
Mhm.
and the land is the same way. Like the land, we
Mhm.
don't get virgin soil. It doesn't matter
Mhm.
if it's never been farmed, it's still not virgin soil. There have been animals living there, there have been nomads living on it. Like there is a history in
Mhm.
this world that
Yeah.
we step into, share for a while, and then step out of. And I love that shivers again. I love that you have just really carried that on so intentionally. Like it's not lip service. It really feels like it's a part of who you are. And yet it's not going to be, I don't think it's going to be like a crippling, stifling thing. Like you're choosing how to carry it forward, when
Mhm.
to carry it forward. And I'm sure that the longer you're there, where to do something different, that
Mhm.
um I'm really I love everything about this. And I would love to talk more about your marketing and all of those kinds of fun things and how you take care of yourself. Like usually that is one of my key questions. How in the world do you take care of yourself while you're doing 26 acres and you have a baby and you've got all the family around? Like we could talk about that for a really
Yeah.
long time, but I think that
Definitely.
I'm going to call it a succession plan for lack
Mhm.
of a better word.
Definitely.
But
Yeah.
but I think your succession plan is so unique and so representative of it's unique and representative of the succession experience at the same time
Mhm.
because every succession plan is unique and
Right.
everyone has to meet the needs of the outgoing farmer as well as the
Mhm.
ingoing farmer if it's done well. If it's done
Right.
well,
You hope. Yeah.
yeah, I mean that is the ideal and too often it's not. Like too often the outgoing farmer can feel kicked out of their business before they're ready. And the incoming farmer feels constrained by things that they were told that they couldn't do. And there's
Yeah.
bitterness. So, like, there are too many ways in which that goes wrong.
Mhm.
But I think yours is such an example of how it can go right. when it doesn't at all look possible. And I'm sure that it was not a fun process. Like, we have glossed over this and we have definitely
Mhm.
put on the rose-colored
Yes.
glasses with
Yes.
the, oh,
Yes.
wasn't it nice to talk to the
Yep.
farmers? And
Yep.
I hear that, keeping boundaries, like detaching from each other was really
Hmm.
important to be able to do the
Hmm.
business part of it without having the
Yes.
emotions get in
Right.
there and muddy the waters. And so
Hmm.
having those resources on the outside who could do that negotiation for you,
Hmm.
hence why we talk about having your mediators come and help you with this as well. If you don't have good farm lawyers and, all that, realtors and all that kind of stuff. Um, but I just love it. And so I want to thank you for sharing all of that very
Yeah.
personal stuff with us and knowing that there are so many more layers that we did not even get to.
Always. It's
Uh,
like an onion.
it is. Life is an onion. Oh, I like the box of chocolates better. But it is an onion, and we keep peeling those back and we get deeper and
Mhm.
deeper into the core of who we are
Yep.
and who we want to be.
Sometimes they're rotten. Sometimes they're really sweet.
Sometimes you got those layers that you're just like, wow, that's really gross, and we're just going to peel that off and
Mhm.
we're going to let it go, and we're gonna go down one more layer and see if we've gotten
Exactly.
something that's white instead of like
Yeah.
brown.
Yeah.
Not that I have ever done this at all with an onion. Never, never have I done this. But before we go, Morgan, I want to ask you my signature question, and that is, if you had one piece of advice that you thought every farmer should have, what would that be?
I think we're going to take it back to the theme of the day, which is set a goal.
Hmm.
Even if the goal is going to change and how you get there is going to change, be open to the possibilities because farming is never the same. And you always have to be ready to spin your priorities around and do something different and pivot to the next goal. So yeah, be flexible.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And your goal, interestingly enough, like your goal has always remained, like the big goal hasn't really
Hmm.
changed because
Hmm.
there is a purpose that we're made for. I believe everybody is made for a purpose. And some of us get several purposes throughout our lives, and some of us get one,
Hmm.
and then we fulfill that in different ways. And, that once that farming goal was there, it was there, and you knew this is what I
There.
meant to do. How
Yep.
I do it is going to change. It might look
Hmm.
really different from year to year, place to place, but that overarching purpose hasn't changed for you at this point in your life, and I love that. So set a goal, folks. Even if it's impossible looking, to dream the impossible dream. Oh, there you go. Got my musical side coming out. All
Woohoo.
right. So I want to thank you, Morgan, for joining us. This has been so much fun. I want to thank all of you out there, and we will see you next time on Food, Flowers, and Fun. Bye.
How do you multiply by fractions, Mom?
Farmers calling, our show is all done. Goodbye, farewell, so long, adieu. See you next week, same time, same place for Food, Flowers, and Fun. Go in peace. Visit us at www.penlightfarmers.com.